Over the past 3 years, I've tried every single outreach strategy I could possibly do to try to get clients. So I'm going to show you the results that I've gotten after trying dozens and dozens of different strategies. And at the end, I'm going to give you a game plan of strategies that you should use to get hundreds of appointments per month. The first strategy I ever tried was cold email, just like everybody else. When I started, there wasn't a warm-up strategy. There was no warm-up tools. You had to like sign up for tons and tons of different newsletters so that you would get a ton of emails on your account. And that's how you would warm up your account. If I were you and you're just getting started, email would be the last outreach strategy that I would do. Cold email takes the longest to actually set up. It's the longest to warm up. It usually takes 2 weeks to a month to warm up, and it's the most expensive. If you want to set up an extensive cold email campaign that's actually going to work for you, it's going to cost a minimum of $300, but there's plenty of other strategies out there that will work a lot better for a lot cheaper. And on top of that, the reply rate for cold email is lower than almost any other strategy. Like your reply rate is going to be about 1 to 5%. And I'm not saying cold email is bad. It's actually really good if you have the time and the money to wait for it to get set up, and if you're reaching out to a wider audience. It's probably one of the easiest to scale, and to scale like thousands per day, unlike a lot of the other strategies. And for me, it's actually the way I got my first couple clients in my agency, but that was 3 years ago. A lot has changed since then. It used to be really simple. Now it's extremely complex, and I was using a terrible script at the time, so it wasn't working that well for me. So the next strategy I started using was Facebook business page outreach, and this is actually how I got my very first client. Basically, all you do is you just look up whoever you're trying to reach on Facebook. So if you're reaching out to local businesses, a lot of times if you just look up pest control on Facebook, it's going to show you all the pest control companies in your local area. So I just started reaching out to all the business pages that showed up. You can send about 50 messages per day. You'll get about a 10% reply rate depending on the industry that you're trying to target, and then you're getting usually about a 1 to 2% booking rate out of the 50 messages that you send per day. So for Facebook, you're not going to get like a ton of sales calls, but the calls that I got were actually really high quality, where a lot of them would close. I would get like a 50% close rate on my Facebook calls, just because I don't know, they were just a lot higher quality than any other platform that I was using. And then while I was doing email and Facebook, I also started doing LinkedIn using some LinkedIn automations. And again, in the beginning, I was using these terrible scripts, and so I was doing very bad, but I was still able to get a good amount of sales calls from LinkedIn. And what's funny is at the time when I first started, I was using a tool called WeConnect, and it wasn't doing the best for me. It wasn't the greatest tool in the world. And so I started using a lot of other tools, but now I use WeConnect again, just because it can help me get past certain LinkedIn limits. See, the problem with most of these platforms is that they limit you on how many messages you can send per day. If we didn't have these limits, you could get an infinite amount of clients every single day, you know. So LinkedIn has a limit of 100 per week, and some tools allow you to do 200 per week, so they get past that limit. But there's also other tools that allow you to do 500 per week or 700 per week. So WeConnect's one of those tools that allow me to do 500 per week. And with LinkedIn, there's a few different ways you can actually outreach to people. So the way that I started, the normal way, is just doing connection request campaigns. This is basically you're just sending a connection request to somebody. Once they accept it, the automation will automatically send them a message and just see if they're interested in your offer. You can also do in-mail campaigns. This is basically just you can send a message to all these open profiles. An open profile is just a profile where anybody can send a message to that person. And so you can send a message to them, and you can have a whole campaign that sends a message to all the open profiles, and so you'll get a really high response rate from those. You can also join a LinkedIn group, and when you're in the LinkedIn group, you can message everyone in that LinkedIn group, even if you're not connected with them or they're not an open profile. And usually on LinkedIn, your connection rate is between 10 and 20%. Sometimes 30% of people will connect with you, and you'll get about a 10 to 20% response rate. So at this point, I'm 2 months into my agency. I'm doing LinkedIn, I'm doing Facebook, I'm doing email. I wasn't really doing any of them consistently, but I was getting to like 1 or 2 appointments per week, and I was very unsatisfied with those 1 or 2 appointments per week. So I thought I would try paid ads. Just running paid ads so that people would see the ad, and then they would book a call with me, and I would try to sell them my services. At the time, I was targeting solar companies, and I got an ad actually myself. Someone was promoting an ad on like how to get appointments for $5 each using paid ads. And so I was like, oh, that's perfect for me. So I bought that thing. It was like a $150 little mini course. He was promising you could get these appointments for like $3 to $5 each, which was crazy insane. I started like using his paid ad strategy, doing Facebook ads, and I was getting like, I got 1 appointment out of that whole thing. I spent like $150, got 1 appointment, was not worth it. And when I called the person, I asked them like 2 questions, and then they hung up. So paid ads did not work for me, but I had someone reach out to me while I was going through all this, trying to get as many appointments as I could. Someone reached out and said, hey, I have a trained VA that can help you get appointments. So then I tried hiring a trained VA, and I realized now how dumb I am. So this guy convinces me to get on a call with him. On the call, he says he has trained VAs that can help me book more sales calls. I said I was all ears. He said it's $500 per month, and if it doesn't work, he'll give me all my money back. But I was still a little skeptical. So he said, look, just look at my calendar. He shows me his calendar. He's got all these booked appointments. I'm like, wow, it must work amazing. I guess I just have to move forward. It was honestly a genius move on his part to do that. I was fully convinced, and then I paid him the money, and I got this trained VA. So I hired this guy. We get on our first appointment. He's from Pakistan, and I say, okay, man, what are we going to do to get more appointments? How are we going to get more appointments? And he said, what do you mean? Aren't you supposed to be trained and you know how to get me plenty of appointments? So what are you going to do? Well, what do you want me to do? I talked to this guy. He was really cool. His goal was to start a farm. But I was like, why did I hire this guy? This guy's just trying to make a farm. He's just trying to make a living. And I hired him to get me appointments. He has no clue how to. I just asked him, okay, just try doing some cold calls. So he starts doing cold calls for me. He never books me any appointments. I asked for the guy for my money back. He blocks me on all platforms. So if you're trying to hire, what I recommend to anybody, if you're trying to hire a VA or hire someone else to do this job for you of getting appointments for you, just know no one's going to be as good as you. If you suck, the person below you is going to suck even more. So you should get good at getting appointments yourself, and then you can hire somebody and train them on how to do it, because they're never going to be as good as you. So I'm still not getting any appointments. I'm getting like 1 to 3 appointments a week. So I just decided to try SMS. This was just a long shot. Nobody was doing it, but I thought, like, everybody reads their texts. I was getting these lists from D7 Lead Finder that came with all these emails that I was using to send out email campaigns, but they also came with phone numbers. So I was like, why don't I just send out texts to all these phone numbers? So on a Saturday afternoon, I decided to try it out. I took 100 phone numbers, uploaded it into a campaign, and sent out 100 texts out. And I got so many responses, I couldn't keep up with all the replies. I had maybe like a 30 or 40% response rate. It was crazy back then. And I got 10 booked calls just from sending 100 messages. Now it's a little harder to do. You're not going to get crazy results like that because everybody copies Karsten because I'm an OG and everybody else is a sheep. Anyways, nowadays you can expect about a 10 to 30% response rate, and you can expect about a 1 to 5% booking rate if you have a good offer. And SMS, I put SMS in the same category as WhatsApp or iMessages. It's all the same thing. So you're going to get about the same results regardless. From here, I did a whole bunch of SMS outreach. I got a ton of clients. A lot of things changed in my business, and I started focusing on Facebook groups. I think Facebook is probably one of the most under-leveraged tools in our industry. There's literally 3 billion people on Facebook, and so your audience is probably on Facebook somewhere. One simple strategy is literally just going into a Facebook group of your target market. Let's say you're targeting real estate agents. There's plenty of real estate agent Facebook groups. You go in there, you go to the members tab, and you just start messaging people one by one. You'll get a 5 to 10% reply rate and about a 1 to 2% booking rate if your offer is pretty good. And this is probably the best strategy ever, is just actually posting into the Facebook groups. Because look, you have this group of 10,000 real estate agents. If you post in that group, you now just got in front of 10,000 real estate agents in that one post. The thing is, a lot of groups, they'll ban you if you start trying to promote yourself. So you kind of want to be careful with this. But if you can post in a group and just post your offer, that's how I got into this industry. I basically just posted into one Facebook group because I saw someone else post into that Facebook group. I literally copied his post, pasted it myself, and got a whole bunch of comments and got my first couple clients. Facebook group is really how I scaled to 10K really quickly. So one, going into other Facebook groups, like leveraging them as much as possible, but also creating your own Facebook group so that you can like have and own your own audience. From here, I started reading a lot from Dan Kennedy, Jay Abraham, and Gary Halbert, and they talked about how great direct mail was. And so I thought I would give it a shot. They said it's really important to have theater, to make your mail look different than everybody else's. So I tried to do everything I possibly could to make this direct mail campaign the absolute best campaign I've ever done in my life. So I wrote these really compelling letters. I put QR codes into each letter, and the QR code had the person's face within the QR code. I also studied all of this stuff. Like if you handwrite the address, you'll have a higher open rate. And if you do it in a girl name, it'll have a higher open rate. And if you do it in blue ink, it'll have a higher open rate. So I did all these things. I also had a wax seal kit. I wax sealed all of these, and I put a little key on it because the whole theme of the letter was you found the key to getting consistent sales calls. I had over 100 letters. It took me like 30 hours to do this whole thing, and it cost me around $200. I got no meetings from this direct mail campaign. I was very disappointed. I followed up with everybody that I sent a piece of mail to, and I sent them emails. I sent them a 3 email sequence, and no one replied until I sent the 3rd email, and I got a couple responses and 1 booked call. So I do not recommend direct mail, but at the same time, I also wanted to test Instagram outreach. Now, the problem with Instagram, it's kind of hard to target the right industry depending on who you're trying to target. So for me, when I was starting to do outreach on Instagram, I'm trying to target like some marketing agencies. So the only thing you can really do to target people is like hashtags. So I did hashtag marketing, but the problem is if you do hashtag marketing, you just have a lot of these random Instagram accounts that just like blast these hashtags. So I'll start reaching out, and it's just a whole bunch of people that are, you know, Fiverr people or people that are on Upwork that I can't really help. The response rate was high. A lot of people were interested. I did get some good booked calls, but they were just lower quality calls. And I was like, I might as well just do Facebook more than Instagram, just because Instagram just wasn't working for me. Now, if you're in a different industry, it might work better for you. If you're like in the beauty industry, you're trying to get people that are nail salons, it's gonna be a lot easier. If you're trying to get people that are like landscaping companies, it's probably a lot easier. So for me, it didn't work, but it might work for you. But in the spirit of trying new things, I also tried voicemail drops. This is basically just like cold calling. You just sending a voicemail to somebody, and then you wait for them to call you back. You can automate all this so that it just sends out hundreds of voicemails to everybody. The thing is, if you're sending out hundreds at a time, you're only one person, so you can only take 1 call at a time. I mean, I guess you can have multiple people do this, and you also have to like take time to sit there and like to answer all the calls and turn it into a booked call onto your calendar. And so this is probably one of the best ways to get results really quick. And SMS, like you can get responses today. You can get booked sales calls today if you do those strategies. So at this point, people started noticing how good I was at getting appointments, and I was becoming an expert in this field. And so I tried a whole bunch of more weird strategies just to look like more of an expert. So I tried Google Calendar invites, PayPal outreach, Skype outreach, and much more, but I won't get into all of those. I started getting into these little small communities on like Discord chats, Telegram channels, and Slack communities. And so I was sharing my strategies, and I started getting people that were interested in my service when I was active on these Discord and Slack communities. Honestly, one of the easiest ways to get leads and sales is just by going into these little small communities and just positioning yourself as the expert by saying you're getting these crazy end results. I see people all the time. They'll go into these little groups and they're saying, hey, I'm getting hundreds of appointments by doing this unique cold calling strategy. And everyone's like, how do you do that? They start drooling because they're like, how are you getting this crazy end result? And I'm not getting that crazy end result. Everybody wants to like look up to somebody. Everyone wants to plug in the core to somebody else. Somebody else has all the strategies. Someone else is the expert. Or really the thing is, no one's the expert. No one has no clue what they're talking about. And all you got to do is really just act like you are the expert and people will come to you. That's like the whole strategy is try to get people to come to you. Don't start plugging into people. Have other people plugged into you. So the way you get people to plug into you, go to these communities and you say, hey, look, I'm getting these crazy end results. Come to me. And they're going to want to pay you for your services because they don't know how to do it and you do. And this kind of leads into inbound strategies. This is the main way I use to get appointments right now, just positioning myself as an authority on any platform I can. So mainly on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Now, the way to start positioning yourself as an authority is really just to give value to other people. The more you give, the more you will get. And the way that I started giving was just helping people solve their problems. I was just answering questions for them, showing my strategies on how I was getting the end results that they wanted. That's the best way to actually get clients, is really just help people solve their problems without wanting anything in return. And then people will give you something in return because you're helping them. And now I book about 300 sales calls per month just from the inbound strategies. But obviously when you're starting out, you can't really do all that. So this is what I would do if I were you, if you're just starting out. Set up SMS, LinkedIn, Facebook, and maybe voicemails if you have the time. Try to set all those up as quickly as you possibly can and send as many messages as you possibly can across all those platforms. If you're just sitting around all day and you're trying to think about how do I get more sales calls, the best thing you can do is just send more messages. It's all a game of numbers. So send as many numbers as you possibly can. The more numbers you send out, the more responses you'll get back. And with those platforms, SMS, Facebook, LinkedIn, and voicemails, you should have people responding by the end of, like within the next 3 days, you'll have people responding saying that they're interested or they're not interested. If everyone's saying that they're not interested, you need to change up the offer or change the market that you're sending to. And honestly, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, you should have a client in the door if you actually start sending from all those platforms. Like there's no way that you do not have a client if you're sending from SMS, Facebook, LinkedIn, and voicemails every single day. There's no way you don't have a client. And what's amazing is I found a way to automate all these strategies to get 120 sales calls per month consistently on autopilot. So if you want my help creating a system for you to consistently get 120 sales calls per month, you can book a call with my team below. I will talk to you guys soon.